Cynthia hurried through the long hallway of the Grand Star Hotel, pushing her cleaning cart with tired, aching hands. Her hair was tied in a loose bun, and her blue uniform was stained from hours of non-stop work. She had barely slept in days. Her younger brother was still in the hospital, and the bills were piling up faster than she could pay them. Every extra shift she took felt like climbing a mountain while carrying a heavy load on her back. She glanced down at her checklist, squinting under the hallway light. "Next room, Suite 1503, she whispered. "The presidential suite. The important one." She sighed and pushed her cart forward. At the same time, a black luxury car pulled up outside the hotel. Elton stepped out, his face dark with frustration. He was a young tech billionaire who had flown in from Dubai for a very important business deal that could change everything for his new AI company. Investors were already waiting to hear his plans. But his private jet had been delayed, his assistant had messed up his schedule, and now he had been told his suite still wasn't ready. "You've got to be kidding me," Elton muttered, walking quickly into the lobby with his phone pressed to his ear. He hardly looked at anyone as he marched down the hallway toward his room. Cynthia, focused on her cleaning supplies and her thoughts, didn't hear him coming. She turned the corner with her mop bucket, just as Elton rounded the same bend. Crash! Dirty water splashed over his designer shoes and the bottom of his crisp white shirt. His phone slipped from his hand and hit the floor. For a moment, everything went silent. "Oh my goodness! Sir, I am so sorry," Cynthia gasped. Elton stared at his soaked clothes, his jaw tightening. "Do you even know what you just did?" he growled. Cynthia froze, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. She bent down quickly, trying to wipe the water from his shoes with a shaky hand, but Elton stepped back sharply. "Don't touch me," he snapped, his voice low and sharp like a knife. A few hotel staff nearby turned to stare. Some whispered to each other. Everyone knew who he was, the rich, powerful guest with no patience for mistakes. Cynthia felt heat rush to her cheeks. She wished she could disappear into the floor. "I didn't see you coming, sir. I swear it was an accident." "Please forgive me," she said, her voice shaking. Elton let out a cold, angry laugh. "This suit costs more than your salary for the whole year," he said. The words hit her like a slap. Cynthia's chest tightened, but she lowered her eyes and nodded. "I understand, sir." Without another word, Elton stepped around her, picked up his phone, and walked away, still dripping. Cynthia stood there for a few seconds, trying not to cry. A co-worker rushed to her side. "Cynthia, what have you done?" the woman whispered. "You just splashed water on Elton Gray. Are you crazy?" Cynthia shook her head. "It was an accident," she murmured. She pushed her cart away and tried to focus on her work, but shame followed her through the hallways. Her hands wouldn't stop trembling. Later that evening, her supervisor handed her a room card. "Suite 1503, she said firmly. "The guest has stepped out. Go clean it. Be quick, and don't make any mistakes." Cynthia swallowed hard and nodded. She didn't realize it was the same man's suite. The elevator ride felt endless. When she finally stepped into the huge, quiet room, she let out a tired breath. She cleaned every corner slowly, her legs burning with pain. At last, she sat on the edge of the giant bed. Just for a minute, she told herself. Her eyes closed. She never meant to fall asleep. Elton returned to the hotel late that night, more frustrated than before. The business dinner had gone badly. The investors kept checking their phones, asking difficult questions, and nothing had gone the way he had planned. He loosened his tie as he walked toward his suite, his mind full of numbers and problems. "This day is cursed," he muttered under his breath as he unlocked the door. He stepped inside, but stopped immediately. Someone was on his bed. Not a thief. Not a fan. A hotel cleaner. Cynthia lay curled up on his white sheets, sound asleep, still in her uniform, a feather duster loose in her hand. What on earth? Elton's anger rose instantly. He strode across the room, grabbed her shoulder, and shook her. "Hey! Wake up!" Cynthia jolted awake, eyes wide with fear. She sat up too fast, nearly falling off the bed. "No, please, I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't mean to sleep here. I was just tired. Please don't fire me." Elton stared at her, ready to explode, but then recognition hit him. "You," he said slowly. "You're the girl from the hallway." Cynthia's face turned even paler. "Yes, sir. I'm so sorry about earlier. About the water. About this. I didn't mean any of it. I was just cleaning and my legs, they gave up." Her voice shook as tears filled her eyes. Anger still burned inside Elton, but another feeling pushed through it. She didn't look lazy or careless. She looked completely worn out. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her hands were trembling. "Are you insane?" he asked, but his tone was softer than before. "I'm really sorry," she whispered. He stared at her for another long second, then finally said, "Get out." Cynthia jumped to her feet and ran out of the room. The door closed quietly behind her. Elton stood there, breathing hard, then slowly sat down on the same bed. "Who is that girl?" he muttered. "And why is she bothering me so much?" Cynthia walked back to the staff room with shaky legs, barely seeing where she was going. When she pushed open the door to the locker room, a few workers turned to look at her. Some quickly looked away. Others stared a little too long. She sat down on the wooden bench and covered her face with her hands. Her fingers still smelled like lemon cleaning spray. Her whole body felt heavy with shame and exhaustion. A few minutes later, the door flew open. Her supervisor stormed in, holding a clipboard tightly. "Cynthia!" she shouted. "What have you done now?" Cynthia looked up, eyes red. "I didn't mean to fall asleep. I was so tired. It just happened." "In his bed?" the woman snapped. "In Elton Gray's bed? Do you have any idea who he is?" "Yes, ma'am," Cynthia whispered. "You are very lucky," the supervisor said, lowering her voice but still sounding angry. "He could have called security. He could have demanded your job. He could have made a scene. But he didn't." Cynthia swallowed hard. Is he firing me?" The woman sighed. "No. But he made one thing clear. You are never allowed to clean his suite again. Ever." Cynthia nodded quickly. "Yes, ma'am. I understand." "Good," the supervisor said. "Now go home. You look like you might collapse." That night, instead of going straight home, Cynthia stopped at the public hospital. Her younger brother, Leo, was lying on a narrow bed, pale and weak. Machines beeped quietly beside him. She sat down next to him and brushed his hair back gently. "Hey, Leo," she whispered. "How are you feeling today?" He opened his eyes slowly and gave her a tiny smile. "I'm okay." "You look tired, Cindy." She smiled sadly. "Yeah, but I'm fine. I just had a long day." Back at the hotel, Elton stood by his window, staring at the sparkling city lights far below. He tried to focus on his tablet, on the charts and reports, but his mind kept drifting back to the girl with the tired eyes who had fallen asleep on his bed. "This is ridiculous," he said softly. "Why do I even care?" The next morning, Cynthia arrived at work earlier than usual, hoping to avoid attention. She prepared her cleaning cart, kept her head down, and waited for the whispers and teasing she knew were coming. But something felt different. No one laughed. No one teased her. Instead, people seemed quiet. Some moved away when she walked past. Others glanced at her and then quickly turned away, like they were afraid to be seen talking to her. In the back kitchen, her supervisor approached her again, but this time her face looked more puzzled than angry. "You've been requested," the supervisor said. "Requested?" Cynthia frowned. "Yes. Room service. Suite 1503. Cynthia froze. "Who requested me?" "Elton Gray," the woman replied. "He asked for you by name." Cynthia's stomach twisted. Why would he do that? "I don't know," the supervisor said. "Just take the tray up, do your job, and come back. And please, Cynthia, Don't fall asleep this time. A few minutes later, Cynthia stood outside the door of Suite 1503, holding a breakfast tray. Her hands were shaking. She took a deep breath and knocked. The door opened, and Elton stood there. He wasn't wearing a suit today, just a simple shirt with the sleeves rolled up. His hair was slightly messy, like he hadn't slept much either. "Come in," he said calmly. Cynthia walked in carefully and placed the tray on the glass table. I'm sorry again, sir," she said quietly. "For everything." Elton didn't answer immediately. He poured himself a cup of coffee, then spoke. "You didn't get fired." "No, sir." "You're lucky," he said. "Yes, sir," she replied softly. He looked at her for a moment. "What's your name?" "Cynthia," she said. "Cynthia Adams." "Do you always work this hard, Cynthia?" he asked. "Yes, sir. I don't really have a choice." Elton nodded slowly, then picked up a small envelope from the table and held it out to her. "This is for you." "I don't think I can take that, sir," she whispered. "It's just a tip," he said firmly. She took the envelope, still unsure. She didn't open it until she left the room. Inside was a thick bundle of money. More than she earned in a month. Her heart raced. Why was he doing this? And what would it mean for her life? Cynthia walked into the staff locker room with the unopened envelope in her hands. She placed it gently on the bench beside her and stared at it as if it might suddenly speak. Her heart was racing. The money inside could pay for Leo's medicine, food for the week, maybe even transportation for a month. But a voice inside her whispered, "Nothing comes free. Not from someone like him." She closed her eyes and took a long breath. A co-worker peeked over her shoulder. "Is that what I think it is?" Cynthia quickly covered the envelope. "It's nothing." "Nothing?" the woman scoffed. "Girl, everyone knows he gave you something. Elton Gray doesn't just hand out tips like candy." Cynthia didn't respond. She didn't trust her voice not to shake. Later that afternoon, as she was finishing her shift, her supervisor approached. "Cynthia," she said, "Suite 1503 again. He asked for you." Cynthia's breath caught. "Again?" "Yes," the supervisor said. "And don't ask me why. Just go." Cynthia walked slowly to the elevator, her palms sweating. When she knocked, Elton opened the door almost immediately, as if he had been standing right behind it. "You're early," he said. I try not to be late, sir," she replied. He walked back into the room. "Come in." On the table were 2 cups of tea. He motioned to a chair. "Sit. Just for a minute." Cynthia hesitated. "Sir, I'm not supposed to." "It's just a seat," Elton said with a small sigh. "I'm not asking you to break any rules." She sat carefully, her back straight. After a long silence, Elton asked softly, "What would you be doing if you weren't cleaning hotel rooms?" Cynthia looked down at her hands. "I wanted to study nursing," she whispered. "But life didn't go the way I hoped." Elton nodded slowly. "Life rarely listens to us," he said. For the first time, he wasn't speaking at her. He was speaking to her. Cynthia shifted uncomfortably in the chair, unsure why he wanted to talk to her. She wasn't used to guests asking her anything personal. Most barely noticed when she entered a room. She glanced at the steaming cup of tea on the table. Elton followed her gaze. Without a word, he poured tea into the second cup and placed it gently in front of her. "Here." Cynthia blinked. "Sir, I don't think I should." "It's just tea, Cynthia." His voice was calm, almost tired. "Not a contract." Slowly, she lifted the cup and took a sip. It was warm, gentle, and strangely comforting. Elton sat across from her, resting his elbows on the table. "Tell me something," he said. "Why do you work so hard?" Cynthia gave a small, sad smile. "Because I have to. My brother is sick, and I'm all he has." Elton's expression softened. "Your brother." "Leo," she said quietly. He's been in the hospital for months now. Elton looked down at his hands, thinking, "That must be hard." "It is," she admitted. "But he's the only family I have left." They sat in silence for a moment, the soft music in the background filling the room. Elton looked at her again. "Why didn't you keep the envelope earlier?" Cynthia froze. "How did you?" "The supervisor told me," he said simply. "She said you hesitated." Cynthia swallowed. "I didn't want you to think I'm expecting anything." Elton leaned back. "You're not. It was just a tip." She nodded, still unsure. "Cynthia." "Yes, sir." "Next time," he said quietly, "call me Elton." She looked up in surprise. "That's my name," he added with a small smile. Cynthia stood slowly. "All right, Elton." She left the room with her heart beating much too fast. That evening, Cynthia returned home carrying a loaf of bread and the envelope tucked deep in her pocket. Their small room smelled faintly of disinfectant from the clinic. Leo sat up on his thin mattress when she walked in. "You bought the soft bread," Leo said, his eyes lighting up. Cynthia smiled, handing it to him. "Only the best for you." He tore a small piece and took a slow bite. "You look tired, Cindy." "I'm always tired," she joked weakly. He watched her for a moment, then asked, "Did something happen today?" Cynthia paused, then shook her head. "Not really. Someone gave me a tip. More than usual." Leo didn't press. He knew she rarely talked about her struggles. Later that night, when Leo was asleep, Cynthia sat by the window and opened the envelope again. She counted the money slowly, her fingers trembling. "This could help," she whispered. "This could really help." Finally, she made her decision. "I'll keep it," she said softly. "But I'll earn it. I won't owe him anything." Meanwhile, at the hotel, Elton stood on the balcony of his suite. The city lights shimmered in the distance, but his mind was somewhere else. He thought about Cynthia, the tired look in her eyes, the quiet strength in her voice, and the way she apologized like she carried the world's weight. He shouldn't be thinking about her. He never let himself get distracted. But tonight, he couldn't help it. His assistant called. "Sir, should I book your flight back to Dubai for tomorrow?" Elton hesitated. "No," he said slowly. "Extend the suite indefinitely." "Indefinitely?" "Yes," Elton replied, staring at the night sky. He didn't understand why he said it, but he knew it had something to do with a girl named Cynthia. The next morning, Cynthia tried to forget about Elton and focus on her job. But that was impossible, because her supervisor found her again around lunchtime. "Suite 1503, she said, her eyebrow raised. "He asked for you again." Cynthia's heart thudded. "Again?" "Yes," the supervisor groaned. "And whatever is happening, please don't drag me into it." Cynthia made her way to the suite. When she knocked, Elton opened the door with music playing softly behind him. "You're early," he said with a faint smile. "I try to be," she replied. "Come in." She stepped inside and set the tray on the table. But before she could leave, Elton pointed to the chair again. "Sit. Just for a minute." "Sir, I mean—" "Elton, I really shouldn't." "Just 1 minute," he insisted. She sat down nervously. They sat in silence for a few moments. He didn't ask her to clean anything. He didn't ask her any strange questions. He just sat there. Finally, Elton asked, "What do you do when you're not working?" Cynthia shrugged. "Try to survive." He nodded. "You're honest." "I don't have any reason not to be." Elton smiled slightly. "Fair enough." He poured her a cup of tea without asking this time, placing it gently in front of her. Cynthia stared at it. "No one ever serves me anything," she said quietly. Elton raised a brow. "Then those people don't know your worth." She looked away, unsure how to respond. After a few minutes, Elton said, "You can go now." Cynthia stood, confused but relieved. "Thank you." As she reached the door, his voice reached her again. "Cynthia, come again tomorrow." She turned, surprised. "For work." "For tea," he said calmly. And for the first time in a long time, something warm fluttered in her chest. As Cynthia walked down the hallway, she felt the warmth of the teacup still lingering on her hands. People whispered as she passed, but she ignored them. She didn't understand what Elton wanted, and she wasn't sure she wanted to know. She only knew one thing: she didn't feel invisible around him. At her locker, she found a small folded paper tucked between her gloves. She hesitated, then opened it. "Meet me by the fountain after your shift." Her hands trembled. For a moment, she considered throwing the note away. She didn't belong near fountains with billionaires. She belonged in laundry rooms and hospital waiting chairs. But she didn't throw it away. When her shift ended that evening, she found herself walking toward the hotel garden. The fountain sparkled under the moonlight, spraying mist into the cool air. Elton stood there waiting, dressed simply in a gray sweater and jeans. No guards. No suit. No expensive watch. "You came," he said softly. "I don't know why," Cynthia admitted. Elton stepped closer. "Do you trust me?" "No," she answered honestly. "But I don't think you're pretending." He nodded slowly. "I want to understand you, Cynthia." She frowned. "Why? We're from different worlds." "That's the problem," he said. "You see it as two worlds. I don't." She looked away. "People like you don't come to neighborhoods like mine." "Then show me," he said quietly. "Show me where you live." Cynthia froze. "I don't bring people there. I'm not people." The words hung between them, soft and dangerous. Finally, Cynthia whispered, "Tomorrow. After my shift." Elton smiled, not the confident billionaire smile, but a warm, thankful one. "Thank you," he said. As Cynthia walked home, her heart raced. She didn't know what she was doing, but she didn't want it to stop. The next day, Cynthia could barely concentrate at work. Her stomach turned every time she thought about the promise she had made to Elton. She changed into her plainest dress after her shift, soft blue with slightly worn edges. She brushed her hair and put on her cleanest sandals. Even then, she felt underdressed, nervous, and strangely hopeful. When she stepped outside the hotel, Elton was already waiting near a sleek black SUV. He wasn't wearing a suit today, just a button-down shirt and simple slacks. When he saw her, his expression softened instantly. "Ready?" he asked gently. Cynthia hesitated, then nodded. The drive was quiet. Cynthia kept her hands folded tightly on her lap. Elton didn't speak until she did. "This is the longest car ride I've ever taken with a stranger," she finally said. Elton smiled slightly. "Maybe we're not strangers anymore." She looked at him from the corner of her eye. His voice held a weight that made her chest tighten. They reached her neighborhood just after sunset. Children played barefoot in the dusty street. Generators hummed loudly. Small wooden shops flickered with weak lights. "You don't have to come in," Cynthia said quickly as they approached her building. "It's not like the places you're used to." "I want to," Elton replied calmly. They walked slowly to her door, a rusted metal sheet with peeling paint. Cynthia unlocked it, embarrassed. Inside, Leo sat up on his mattress, his eyes widening. "Cynthia. Who is that?" Cynthia knelt beside him. "A friend." Elton stepped forward and waved. "Hi, Leo. I'm Elton." Leo's eyes lit up. "The tech guy from TV?" Elton laughed softly. "Something like that." He didn't stay long. He didn't try to change anything. He simply looked at the room, small, cracked walls, a shaky fan, and then back at Cynthia, seeing her in a way no one ever had. On the way back, they didn't speak. But when Elton finally said, "Thank you for showing me your world," Cynthia whispered, "It's not much." "It's real," he replied. "Sometimes that's more than anything I have." Cynthia lay awake long after Elton dropped her off. She stared at the ceiling, replaying his words again and again. It's real. No one had ever said anything like that to her. Her world was something she usually hid, something she thought people like him would laugh at or pity. But Elton had looked at her home with quiet respect, not judgment. At the hotel the next day, whispers followed her through the hallways. I heard he visited her house. Impossible. She must be doing something. She's just lucky. Rich men get bored fast. Cynthia kept her head down and worked. She didn't want trouble. She didn't want pity. And she definitely didn't want rumors spreading. But the whispers continued anyway, buzzing like flies around her ears. Meanwhile, Elton seemed unaffected. He still asked for her each day, sometimes for tea, sometimes with no reason at all. They talked about small things, music, memories, dreams neither dared to say too loudly. Yet neither of them spoke about the strange pull growing between them. One afternoon, Elton handed her a small box. This is for you. Cynthia frowned. Elton, I can't take any more gifts. It's nothing big, he said. She opened it slowly. Inside was a thin silver necklace. Simple. Elegant. Not flashy. It reminded me of you, Elton said quietly. Cynthia swallowed hard. I don't know if I should. You don't have to wear it, he added softly. Just keep it, if you want. She said nothing, but she took the box. That night, she put the necklace on under her uniform. No one saw it except Elton. When she entered his suite the next morning, his eyes landed on the small silver chain peeking from her collar. You're wearing it, he said. Cynthia didn't answer. She didn't have to. They both knew what it meant. 3 weeks passed, and something unspoken grew between Cynthia and Elton. Inside Suite 1503, they shared quiet moments, cups of tea, short conversations, long silence that felt safe instead of awkward. Cynthia never tried to impress him. Elton never acted superior. They simply existed together in a way that surprised both of them. But outside the suite, the world buzzed louder. Some staff whispered with envy. Others sneered with jealousy. A cleaner and a billionaire? It'll never last. She's just a phase. He'll drop her soon. Cynthia heard everything but reacted to nothing. She wasn't with Elton for gifts or attention. She wasn't even sure what they were yet. She only knew that talking to him felt different, gentler, more real. Elton, on the other hand, found himself distracted during meetings. He missed calls. He forgot appointments. His mind drifted to Cynthia at the worst times. He denied it to himself at first. It's nothing, he muttered one evening. Just curiosity. But the truth followed him wherever he went. Then came the necklace moment. Cynthia walked into his suite carrying a tray, and he saw the silver chain around her neck. Their eyes met. No words were exchanged, but the room shifted. Something deep and delicate settled between them, fragile like thin glass yet undeniable. Still, they didn't confess anything. Still, they didn't touch. One night, Elton sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the ceiling. "What am I doing?" he whispered. "This isn't me." He had been in relationships before, glamorous ones, loud ones, expensive ones. But none of them felt like this. None of them made him want to understand someone so deeply. And Cynthia? She didn't know what she felt yet. But she found herself smiling without meaning to, thinking about a man she should have feared. Both of them were standing at the edge of something dangerous. Neither wanted to turn back. The storm arrived in heels. Literally. One bright morning, the hotel lobby went silent as Elton's mother, Mrs. Adele Gray, stepped inside. Tall, elegant, and sharp-eyed, she moved like a queen walking through her kingdom. 2 assistants followed her, carrying designer bags and tablets. She didn't check in. She didn't ask questions. She demanded a key to Elton's suite. The receptionist stuttered. "Ma'am, Mr. Elton is in a meeting and—" Mrs. Gray lifted a hand. "I didn't ask if he was available." Within minutes, She reached suite 1503 and entered without knocking. The suite looked immaculate as always, except for a few things that made her frown. 2 teacups on the table, a faint floral scent in the air, and a long strand of hair that clearly did not belong to her son. Her eyes narrowed. "Is there a woman?" she whispered to herself, displeased. She didn't wait. She didn't confront Elton yet. She simply watched and waited. 3 days later, she stood on the lobby balcony when she saw it. Elton walking with a staff girl in a sky-blue uniform. Cynthia. They weren't touching, but the way Elton paused, the way he looked at her, the quiet smile he gave her, it was enough. Mrs. Gray's lips tightened. Later that day, Cynthia received a folded note on hotel letterhead. "You are invited for a private tea. Suite 1104. 4:30 p.m. Mrs. Gray." Cynthia's heart dropped. She didn't tell Elton. She didn't tell anyone. She changed into her cleanest uniform and went. Mrs. Gray opened the door and smiled, a cold, elegant smile. "Cynthia, isn't it? Come in." The room smelled like expensive perfume and quiet danger. "I hear you've made quite an impression on my son," Mrs. Gray began. Cynthia lowered her gaze. "I didn't mean to." "Let me be clear," the woman said, pouring tea like poison. "This ends now." Cynthia's heart sank. Mrs. Gray's voice was sweet, but her words were sharp. "My son is a billionaire." "You are a cleaner," she said carefully, as if choosing softer words might make the insult sound polite. "Don't confuse kindness with future expectations." Cynthia kept her hands folded in her lap. She didn't trust herself to speak without shaking. Mrs. Gray reached into her designer bag and pulled out a white envelope. She placed it on the table between them. "This is enough money for you to start over somewhere far from here." Far from him. Cynthia stared at the envelope, then slowly looked up. "Ma'am, I'm not looking for money." "That's good," Mrs. Gray said with a thin smile. "Then you won't mind walking away." Cynthia stood up, her voice soft but steady. "I came here to work, not to beg, and not to be bought." She left the envelope where it lay. Then she turned and walked out. But something inside her broke. The next morning, Elton waited for Cynthia's knock like he always did. But it never came. Hours passed. He grew restless. He called the kitchen, the staff office, even her supervisor. "Where is Cynthia?" he asked. "She—" The supervisor hesitated. "She didn't report for duty today." "What do you mean she didn't?" Elton demanded. "She also turned in her badge last night. And she took her brother. They're gone." Elton froze. "Gone where?" "No one knows," the supervisor whispered. Elton stood in the middle of his suite, his breath uneven. He searched the room for anything she might have left, a note, a sign, something. All he found was a tiny button near the door and the faint smell of jasmine. He called her number. Switched off. He checked her neighborhood. Empty. And for the first time in years, Elton felt something unfamiliar. Fear. Loss. Pain. Cynthia had left. And she hadn't said goodbye. Elton's world began to unravel the moment he learned Cynthia was gone. He skipped meetings, something he had never done. His assistant knocked on his door over and over. "Sir, the investors are waiting." "Reschedule," Elton said without looking up. "But sir—" "Reschedule." He didn't care. For the first time in his life, a business deal didn't matter. His company didn't matter. His reputation didn't matter. Only Cynthia did. Elton drove back to her old neighborhood. The rusted door was tightly shut, a small lock hanging on it. He knocked anyway. A neighbor stepped out from a nearby doorway. "They left late last night," she said. Elton turned toward her. "Do you know where they went?" The woman shook her head. "No, sir." The girl carried her brother and a small bag. She didn't say goodbye to anyone. Elton stood there silently, feeling something break inside him. That night, he sat on the broken cement step outside Cynthia's former home, staring at the ground. His phone vibrated. His mother's name flashed across the screen. He hesitated before answering. "Elton?" Her voice came smooth and composed. "I trust you've come to your senses." His face hardened. "What did you say to her?" "I simply reminded the girl of reality." "No," he said coldly. "You humiliated her." "I protected you," she insisted. "I didn't need protecting." Mrs. Gray sighed sharply. "Elton, she is not your equal. She is a cleaner." Elton's voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. "She is more real than anyone I've ever met." His mother paused, then said, "You'll thank me later." He hung up before she finished. But when the call ended, so did something else, the last bit of patience he had. He stared at the dark, empty street. "I'm not letting you go, Cynthia," he whispered. "Not like this." Days passed. Then a week. Then 2. The world moved on, but Elton didn't. He stopped attending events, skipped important conferences, missed interviews that were booked months in advance. His assistants panicked. His team whispered. His board asked questions. "Elton, are you okay? When will you return to work? Is something wrong?" He ignored all of them. He hired a private investigator, a powerful one, someone who could trace anyone, anywhere. The man searched hospitals, clinics, schools, old employers, bus stations, small towns nearby. But each time he returned with the same answer. "Sir, no trace." Every night, Elton returned to Suite 1503, still booked in his name. He refused to move to another room or another hotel. The suite smelled faintly like her. Tea, jasmine, something soft and warm he couldn't forget. He couldn't stand the silence, but he also couldn't leave it. One evening, he sat on the rooftop with his closest friend, Toby. The city lights glowed beneath them. "You look terrible," Toby said bluntly. Elton sighed. She left. Without a word. "Are you sure it wasn't fear?" Toby asked. "Women from her background, they think they don't belong." "She belonged more than anyone ever has," Elton murmured. "Then why didn't you tell her?" Elton lowered his head. "I thought I had time." Toby shook his head. "Love doesn't wait forever." Elton clenched his jaw, staring into the night. A memory flashed through his mind. Cynthia smiling softly at Leo, the silver necklace shining against her neck. He had lost deals before. Lost money. Lost trust. But he had never lost something like this. Later that night, he returned to her neighborhood again. It was dark and quiet. The rusted door still locked. A small child's toy lay forgotten on the ground. He picked it up slowly. "Where are you, Cynthia?" he whispered. "Just tell me you're safe." The next morning, Elton sat in his suite, exhausted but sleepless. He had barely closed his eyes when the front desk called. "Sir, there's an envelope for you." "For me." Elton stood up immediately. "From who?" "There's no name, sir. Just your first name written on the front." His heartbeat quickened. "Send it up." Seconds felt like hours until a knock sounded. A staff member handed him the envelope. Elton closed the door quickly, his hands trembling as he tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Elton, you gave me hope when I had none. But I need to find my strength before I can stand beside you." Elton's breath shook as he read it again and again. She wasn't rejecting him. She wasn't gone forever. She was rebuilding herself. He closed his eyes. For the first time in weeks, he felt something break open inside him, a painful relief, but relief all the same. He pressed the note to his chest. "You're alive," he whispered. "You're okay." He didn't know where she was, but now. He knew she wasn't running from him. Just from the life she feared she didn't fit into. Renewed, Elton returned to his work slowly. Not fully, but enough. Enough to keep searching. Enough to keep functioning. Enough to keep believing. Months passed. He filled magazine covers again. He signed new business deals. The world clapped for him. Forbes called him the relentless visionary. But every night, he opened Cynthia's note and read it like a prayer. "Find my strength before I can stand beside you." He whispered the words whenever doubt hit him. "I'll wait," he promised. "I'll always wait." He didn't know it yet, but fate was already leading him back to her, quietly, gently, and in the most unexpected place. It happened on a Saturday morning. Elton had been invited to a community tech outreach program in a small town miles away from the city. He almost didn't go. He rarely attended events like this anymore, but Toby insisted. "You need air," Toby said. "And who knows? Maybe something good will happen." Reluctantly, Elton agreed. The event was simple. Kids learning basic coding, volunteers handing out supplies, teachers chatting in small groups. Elton walked around politely, shaking hands, offering short smiles. His mind wasn't in it. Until he saw the notice board. Pinned to it was a slightly crumpled flyer. Evening literacy classes. Free for girls. St. Grace Primary School. Taught by Miss Cynthia Adams. Elton's world stopped. Cynthia. Her name. In handwriting he knew too well. He read it again just to be sure. His chest tightened. His heart raced. His hand shook slightly as he reached toward the paper. A young teacher nearby smiled. "Yes, Miss Cynthia is wonderful," she said kindly. "She used to work here as a cleaner. Then she started helping some of the girls after class. Now she teaches literacy 3 times a week." Elton swallowed hard. "She teaches here?" "Yes," the teacher replied. "She's very dedicated. Says no girl should grow up without learning how to read." The woman laughed softly. "She even wears this simple silver necklace every day. Says it keeps her strong." Elton's breath caught. "She's here," he whispered. "In the evenings," the teacher said. "She should be coming today." Elton stepped back slowly, overwhelmed. After months of searching, months of waiting, she had been building a new life. Quietly, beautifully. She hadn't disappeared. She had grown. He looked at the classroom door, his heart trembling with hope he thought he'd lost forever. "Cynthia," he whispered. "I finally found you." Elton returned later that evening, long before the literacy class was supposed to end. He waited quietly near the school gate, leaning against a tree. Children's laughter floated through the air. The sun was setting, giving the sky a soft golden glow. He checked his watch repeatedly. His palms were sweating. His heart was beating too fast. What if she didn't want to see him? What if she had moved on? What if she hated him for not stopping his mother sooner? Then he saw her. Cynthia stood near the classroom door with a book in her hand, helping a little girl pronounce a word. She knelt beside the child, guiding her gently. When the girl got it right, Cynthia smiled, a real smile, warm and bright. Elton felt something inside him crack open. He hadn't seen her smile like that before. It was beautiful. When the last child left, Cynthia turned to close the door. And she saw him. Her entire body froze. The book slipped slightly in her hand. Her eyes widened, full of shock and something else, something she tried to hide. "Elton," she whispered. He took a slow step forward. "Hi, Cynthia." She stared at him, confused, breathless. How did you find me?" He gave a small, embarrassed smile. "You taught me something. To look past what is fancy." He paused. "I just followed the light." Her lips parted, but no words came. "You shouldn't be here," she said suddenly. "I had to see you," Elton replied. Cynthia crossed her arms, as if trying to shield her heart. "You're a billionaire. I'm just a cleaner who teaches girls after school." "You're not just anything," Elton said. "And you never were." She shook her head. "Your mother made it clear I don't belong in your world." "She was wrong," he said without hesitation. Cynthia looked away, her voice trembling. "People like you don't come back for people like me." Elton stepped closer. Then tell me why you're still wearing the necklace. Cynthia froze. Her fingers touched the silver chain at her neck. I told myself to throw it away, she whispered. But I couldn't. Why? He asked, his voice so soft it almost broke. Cynthia lifted her eyes slowly, tears shining. Because even when I left, I still loved you. For a long moment, Elton and Cynthia stood there, neither moving, both breathing lightly as if one wrong word could make the moment shatter. The fading light painted their faces gold. Elton swallowed, stepping just a little closer, not enough to startle her, but enough so she couldn't pretend she didn't feel his presence. And I never stopped loving you, Elton said quietly. Cynthia's breath hitched. Her fingers tightened around the book she was holding, as if grounding herself. Elton, everything is different now, she whispered. I left because I needed to learn how to stand on my own. I needed to feel like I wasn't just someone you saved. Elton nodded slowly. And you did stand on your own. Look at you. Teaching these girls. Building something new. Finding strength. You didn't disappear, Cynthia. You became even more you. She blinked rapidly, a tear rolling down her cheek. But your world, your mother, your status. I don't fit into any of it. Elton shook his head. My mother was wrong. She acted out of fear and pride, not love. And I let her speak for me. That was my mistake. But I am not asking you to fit into my world. He stepped closer, gently taking her free hand. I want to build a world with you, he said. Not above you. Not around you. With you. Cynthia stared at their joined hands. Her voice trembled. I don't know if I'm ready for that. Elton nodded. Then we go slowly. What if people judge us? They will, he said simply. But they don't get to decide my life. What if your mother tries again? Elton's jaw tightened. Then she'll learn she doesn't control me. Silence fell again. Soft, heavy, full. Finally, Cynthia whispered, Elton, I'm scared. He brushed a tear from her cheek. Then let me be scared with you. That night, Cynthia didn't go home immediately. Elton didn't leave either. They walked slowly around the school grounds, past quiet classrooms and old wooden benches. The air smelled like chalk, dust, and fading sunlight. Cynthia hugged her arms around herself. Everything feels unreal, she said softly. Seeing you here, in this place. I didn't expect to find you, Elton admitted. I came for a work visit, and suddenly, there you were. On a flyer. He let out a quiet laugh. I almost fell over. Cynthia smiled despite herself. I never thought you'd look for me. Elton stopped walking. I never stopped. She inhaled shakily, unsure what to say. They sat on an old bench under a mango tree. The leaves rustled gently above them. Cynthia placed the book she'd been holding beside her. Elton looked at her carefully. Why did you leave without saying anything? She exhaled slowly. Because I didn't know how to say goodbye. And because your mother made me feel small, like I was stealing something that didn't belong to me. I thought leaving was the only way to keep my pride. Elton's face darkened with regret. You should have come to me. I didn't think you'd understand, she whispered. He reached for her hand again but waited, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he took it gently. I would have fought for you then. I'll fight for you now. Cynthia looked down. You say that now, but your world is huge. Loud. Powerful. And I'm just me. Elton tilted her chin up so she had to meet his eyes. You are exactly the person I want. Not because you're impressive. Not because you're flashy. But because you're real. And honest. And brave. A soft tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. Elton, she whispered, voice trembling. I don't know how to trust this. Then take it one day at a time, he said. One step. One moment. Cynthia finally nodded, her heart opening an inch. That I can try. For the next several weeks, Elton stayed in the quiet town. Not as a billionaire. Not as a powerful CEO. But as a man trying to rebuild trust with the woman he loved. He rented a small house near the school. Simple, clean, nothing fancy. Cynthia visited after her classes, sometimes with Leo, sometimes alone. They ate simple meals together, rice and stew, roasted plantain, sometimes just bread and tea. Elton insisted on learning how to cook the local dishes, but Cynthia laughed every time he burned something. "You're hopeless," she teased, waving smoke away. "I'm improving," Elton replied proudly, although the pot behind him suggested otherwise. Leo adored him. He followed Elton around, asking endless questions about technology, computers, robots. "Elton," Leo said one afternoon, "can robots fall in love?" Elton laughed. "Not yet. But I did." Cynthia rolled her eyes but felt warmth spread through her chest. They walked through dusty streets together. Elton helped Cynthia carry water buckets. She showed him the market stalls where she bought vegetables. He watched her teach literacy classes with gentle patience and quiet strength. At night, they sat outside under the stars. The sky was darker here than in the city, filled with bright, scattered lights. "Do you miss your world?" Cynthia asked one night. "Sometimes," Elton admitted. "But here, peace feels real, not forced." She nodded. "I never thought you would stay. Not in a place like this." He looked at her with a soft smile. "I stayed for you. And because I think I needed this too." Cynthia lowered her gaze. "I'm afraid that when you go back, everything will change again." "Then I'll take you with me," Elton said. Her breath caught. "Elton." "No pressure," he added quickly. "Not now. Not until you're ready. But Cynthia, I'm not letting distance take you away again." Cynthia looked at him, and for the first time, hope felt bigger than fear. A month later, the city buzzed with excitement. Cameras flashed. Guests dressed in elegant clothes filled the Grand Star Hotel once again. Reporters stood waiting outside for the night's big charity gala. And this time, Elton didn't arrive alone. He stepped out of a sleek car dressed in a navy suit. Calm, confident. By his side walked Cynthia, wearing a simple pale blue dress and flat shoes. Her hair was softly curled, and around her neck shimmered the silver necklace he gave her. She didn't cling to Elton's arm, nor did she smile for the cameras. She simply walked beside him, graceful in her simplicity, steady in her steps. The crowd murmured, "Is that her? The cleaner? She looks different. She looks beautiful." Cynthia heard everything, but she kept her eyes forward. Inside the hotel, staff froze. Her old supervisor almost dropped her clipboard. Some workers bowed awkwardly. Others looked away, embarrassed by how they'd treated her. Elton greeted them politely, then turned to Cynthia. "Ready." She inhaled deeply. "As I'll ever be." The gala was held to raise money for community education, including programs Cynthia had helped design. She didn't want the spotlight. Elton respected that. She didn't speak on stage. She didn't stand beside him like a trophy. Instead, she stood near the back, quietly watching. When Elton went up for the final speech, the room fell silent. Cameras lifted. Phones came out. He didn't talk about profits, technology, or innovation. Instead, he said, "I met someone who showed me that kindness doesn't need wealth, strength doesn't need titles, and love doesn't need permission." People leaned in. "She taught me that even the smallest, quietest person can change a life. She changed mine." A soft gasp spread across the room. Cynthia's eyes widened. The applause started slowly, then rose like a wave. Cynthia didn't cry. She simply stood straighter, feeling seen in a way she never had before. Elton looked toward her at the back of the room, and their eyes locked across the crowd. After the gala ended, Elton and Cynthia stepped outside into the cool night air. The city lights flickered behind them, but everything felt strangely peaceful. Elton loosened his tie, looking at Cynthia with a soft smile. "You did well," he said. "I didn't even do anything," she replied. "You being there was enough." Cynthia rolled her eyes gently. "That speech you gave, people will talk." "Let them," Elton said easily. They walked slowly toward the garden behind the hotel. The fountain sparkled with white lights, just like the night he first asked to see her world. Cynthia paused beside the water, feeling the familiar rush of memories. "It's funny," she said. "Everything that happened. All of it started because I fell asleep in your bed." Elton chuckled. "Best accident of my life." Cynthia laughed softly, shaking her head. "You're impossible. And you're worth every impossible moment," Elton replied. She looked down, shy but smiling. The silver necklace glimmered softly at her throat. "Elton," she began quietly, "are you sure about this? About us?" He took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "I've never been more sure of anything. But our worlds don't matter," he cut in gently. "What matters is that we choose each other. Every day. Through the noise, the judgment, the differences." Cynthia looked into his eyes and saw nothing but truth. Then, "I choose you," she whispered. Elton leaned closer, his voice low. "And I choose you. Today, tomorrow, and every day after." Cynthia rested her head against his shoulder. For the first time, the night didn't feel scary. It felt like a beginning. They stood by the fountain, not as billionaire and cleaner, not as fear and doubt, but as two hearts that had finally found home. And together, hand in hand, they stepped forward into their new life. The days that followed the gala were unlike anything Cynthia had ever experienced. Reporters wanted interviews. Fashion brands sent her free dresses. Newspapers printed headlines like, "Billionaire Elton Gray seen with mystery woman. Who is Cynthia Adams?" Cynthia ignored all of it. She didn't want fame. She didn't want attention. She only wanted peace, work, and the quiet life she had always lived. But everywhere she went, people stared. Some smiled politely. Others whispered behind her back. A few even reached out to touch her arm as if she were a lucky charm. At first, she panicked. "Elton, I can't live like this," she said one evening at his apartment, pacing nervously. "Everyone is looking at me like I stole something, or like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not." Elton watched her with calm eyes, waiting until she stopped pacing. "Cynthia," he said gently, "you didn't steal anything. You didn't pretend. You earned every step you've taken. People talk, let them. Their voices can't define you." She sighed deeply. "I know. It's just, I feel out of place sometimes." He smiled. "Then we'll create a place of our own." Cynthia's heart softened. She walked over to him, sitting beside him on the couch. "You make everything sound so easy." "It isn't easy," he admitted. "But it's worth it." The following week, Elton arranged for Cynthia to visit an education foundation in the city. They wanted her advice on creating reading programs for girls in low-income areas. Cynthia sat at a long table with educated professionals, her hands shaking at first. But when she spoke about literacy, about teaching girls to read, her voice grew strong, confident, and everyone listened. After the meeting, Elton said quietly, "You belong here more than you think." Cynthia didn't deny it this time, because somewhere deep inside, she knew he was right. Though things were improving, one problem remained unresolved: Elton's mother. Mrs. Gray had kept her distance after Cynthia returned, but the silence felt heavy, like the pause before a storm. Cynthia tried not to think about it, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Mrs. Gray's disapproval still hovered above them. One afternoon, Elton surprised her. "My mother wants to see us," he said. Cynthia froze. "Us? Why?" She asked to talk. Properly this time. Cynthia's stomach twisted. "Elton, what if she tries to push me away again?" Elton took her hands gently. "She won't. Not this time." And even if she does try, it won't work. I won't let it. Later that evening, they arrived at Mrs. Gray's mansion. The house was enormous, quiet, and intimidating. Cynthia's palms were sweating. Elton squeezed her hand as they walked in. Mrs. Gray was waiting in the sitting room, her posture straight, her face unreadable. For a moment, no one spoke. Then she said, "Cynthia, please sit." Cynthia obeyed cautiously. Mrs. Gray took a deep breath, something fragile flickering behind her eyes. "I judged you," she began, surprising both of them. "I judged you unfairly. I assumed the worst. And I hurt you." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "I am not apologizing because of my son. I am apologizing because I was wrong." Cynthia blinked, stunned. Mrs. Gray continued softly, "Elton has changed. And I see now that it is because of you. You have given him something that money cannot buy. Peace. Balance. Something I never could." Cynthia felt tears sting her eyes. Elton stayed silent, watching. Mrs. Gray looked directly at Cynthia. "If you are willing, I would like a chance to know you properly, without judgment." Cynthia exhaled slowly. "I would like that too." For the first time, Mrs. Gray smiled, genuinely. The storm had passed. Life began to settle after that. Cynthia continued teaching at the literacy program, now with funding from Elton's company and support from the Education Foundation. She trained new volunteers and helped design reading materials. The program grew so quickly that other towns asked for their help. Elton returned to work too, more focused than ever. His company thrived, but he made sure to carve out time each day for Cynthia and Leo, something he'd never done for anyone before. Whenever he had a tough day, he found comfort in the simple evenings they spent together, cooking, talking, laughing. One afternoon, Elton took Cynthia and Leo to the countryside for a break. They walked through wide green fields while Leo chased butterflies. "Elton," Leo called from a distance, "are we a family now?" Cynthia froze, her heart clenching. Elton smiled gently. "What do you think?" he asked Leo. Leo grinned. "It feels like it." Cynthia looked down at her hands. She wasn't sure she was ready for big words like family. But when she watched Elton lift Leo and spin him around, she felt warmth bloom inside her. Later, they sat by a small lake. Elton leaned closer and said, "Cynthia, I want to talk about our future." She swallowed hard. "Elton." "Don't worry," he said softly. "Not a marriage proposal. Not yet. I just want to know what you dream of." Cynthia looked at the lake, thinking. "I dream of a small house. Quiet. A garden. And a place where Leo can grow without fear." Elton nodded. "Then we'll build that dream. Together." Cynthia turned to him. "You really think we can?" "I know we can," he whispered. And for the first time in her life, Cynthia allowed herself to believe in a future that wasn't filled with struggle, but with hope. Months passed like warm sunlight, slowly shaping their new lives. Cynthia became a respected teacher in the community. People who once whispered behind her back now greeted her with admiration. Mothers thanked her for teaching their daughters. Students ran up to her with books clutched tightly in their hands. Elton was no longer the billionaire in Cynthia's neighborhood. He was simply Elton, the man who helped fix a broken classroom desk, who donated books, who knelt beside children to teach them math with patience he never knew he had. One evening, they hosted a small community event at the school. There were snacks, music, dancing, and speeches from the students. Cynthia watched proudly as Leo recited a short poem he'd learned. Elton clapped the loudest. As the sun set, Cynthia stepped outside for air. She leaned against a rail, watching the horizon glow. Elton joined her a moment later. "Tired?" he asked. "A bit," she admitted. "But a good kind of tired." Elton nodded. "I'm proud of you." She smiled. "I'm proud of you too." He hesitated before speaking again. "Cynthia, can I tell you something?" She turned toward him. Of course. He took a slow breath. Before I met you, I thought success was everything. Deals, money, achievements, all of it. But now I know what matters. I know what feels real. Cynthia's gaze softened. What feels real? Elton touched her cheek gently. You. Her breath caught. She had heard sweet words before, but never ones that felt this true. And Leo, he added. And this community. And the life we're building. Cynthia leaned into his touch, her heart full. I never imagined this, she said quietly. Neither did I, Elton replied. But I'm glad it found us anyway. They stood together in the warm evening breeze. No fear, no doubt, only peace. A peace they had both fought for in different ways. 1 year later, the Grand Star Hotel was decorated once again, this time not for a gala, but for a special celebration. Staff members whispered excitedly. Guests dressed in their finest clothes filled the lobby. Cameras flashed outside. But it wasn't a business event. It wasn't about money or reputation. It was about love. Cynthia stood in a soft white dress, not extravagant, not loud, but perfect for her. Simple lace at the sleeves. A flowing skirt. And around her neck, the silver necklace Elton had given her months before. Leo stood proudly beside her as the ring-bearer, holding a small pillow with trembling hands. You look nervous, he whispered. I am, Cynthia said, smiling down at him. You look pretty, Leo added shyly. She kissed his forehead. Thank you. The music began. Elton stood at the end of the aisle, wearing a clean, classic suit. His eyes softened when he saw Cynthia walking toward him. Not with fear this time, not with uncertainty, but with confidence. When she reached him, he whispered, You're breathtaking. And you're late, she teased softly. The small crowd laughed. Their vows were simple. Elton said, You were the quiet voice that changed my loud world. Cynthia said, You saw me when no one else did. They exchanged rings, hands trembling with emotion. When the officiant said, You may kiss the bride, Elton cupped her face gently and kissed her as the room erupted into cheers. Afterward, the three of them, Elton, Cynthia, and Leo, walked out into the evening light together. Not billionaire and cleaner. Not two worlds colliding. Just family. Cynthia looked up at Elton. I still can't believe this all started with me falling asleep in your bed. Elton laughed. Best accident of my life. She leaned her head on his shoulder. And as the night sky glowed above them, they walked forward together. Into a love story they wrote themselves. A story of courage. A story of hope. A story of two hearts that found home in each other.